Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Gary Campopiano, and it's my pleasure to introduce Tom, who will give us his views of art today. And after he talks here for a little while, he's volunteered to go into the gallery and talk about some of the particular pieces that he selected for our current show, Shores and Doors. Is that correct? Yeah. We're very lucky to have Larry Nimmer videotaping this talk because it creates a historic record for the community of some of our well-known and respected artists who are also teachers and jurors in the community. I wasn't able to attend the last gallery talk by Karen Browdy, but there were rave reviews, and by going to, is it YouTube, I was able to watch her presentation, and it really was excellent, and it's a wonderful opportunity to hear these people. About Tom, I wasn't able to get very much from his website, but the little bit that he reveals on his website is that he was born in New Rochelle, New York in 1949. Is that right, Tom?
That's right.
And he lives in Summerlin, California. And I wasn't able to get much of his educational background because he didn't post it on there. So this might be a question we could have
Education?
For Tom. But what was listed is the Instituto Allende in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Anybody know where that is?
Yeah, I've been. It's great. Tom was introduced to art early in life because his father was a professional cartoonist. Tom dabbled in art as a youth, but was more interested in music at that time, so pursued his musical arts rather than his visual art talent. In his 30s, though, he became excited about plein air painting after seeing the work of Charles Movalli and Edward Ward, and he began taking workshops with both of those artists. Their workshops encouraged him to stay loose, enjoy the painting process, and it also inspired him to teach others as well. He soon began teaching painting classes for Santa Barbara Adult Ed. Tom loves working in watercolor and oil, and he's always striving to become a looser painter. And I know that that is the most difficult thing, being a painter myself and trying to be loose. It's a really difficult thing to get loose, and you do a wonderful job of it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
He believes that the subject matter that he uses is open to interpretation, and his paintings are more of a reaction than an actual rendering of his subjects. Some of his favorite subject matter includes harbor scenes, boats, beaches, nature, and architecture, and he also enjoys putting figures into his work. I've not taken any of Tom's classes, but many people that show their artwork here and friends of mine rave about Tom's techniques in teaching in the classroom. He offers workshops outside of his teaching with lifelong learning. Lifelong learning apparently is the new name for adult education. And I understand that Tom is teaching beginning outdoor sketching in pen, ink, and watercolor, beginning watercolor, painting with the flow, and figure drawing. 3 classes. Tom's an excellent musician, plays with his brother. They're called the Henderson brothers, and you can hear them in Summerlin, Santa Barbara, and probably all over the world, right?
All over the world.
Well, it's my pleasure again. Tom, tell us about art and your philosophy, and maybe be open to some questions.
Sure. Thank you, Gary.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Where do you start? I'm thinking about one of the most important things for anybody who's in any stage of art, and that is having somebody around them that encourages them. And I know that for me, having somebody around to go, yeah, you can do it, or you're doing fine, and just making you feel comfortable whatever your level of ability is. And somebody who's here right now is Kai, who was hugely influential to me. And you were somebody who really was, in my very beginning painting, really encouraging, and I have to thank you for that. And I don't probably need to introduce Kai to anybody. One of the few painters who really gets to live and see their fame. Well, you are an amazing painter, and I respect you so much.
The first time I saw you painting, we were both out at some beach, way out in Goleta somewhere, and just went up and talked to another painter. But it was a beautiful watercolor.
Thank you.
And you were doing watercolors then, mostly.
I met you in Jürgen Hansen's figure drawing class.
Oh, okay.
You and I met you, and I don't know if Whitney was even taking, but and Jürgen was another one. I think that if I could start at the beginning, I think that to me art is broken down into 4 distinctively different sections, because when we think about the word art, we're sort of thinking about rendering things. And I think that if you're really going to take the word art apart, you got to look at, maybe there's another one that I've overlooked, but 4 completely different things that we need to understand. And probably the most obvious would be rendering. I think rendering is important. It's not a bad thing to know how to render something, but I think maybe that it's taken maybe a little too seriously by some people, because I think getting too into rendering can kind of take the soul out of the work. So
what is rendering?
Slavishly copying what's in front of you, and not leaving room for your imagination. So obviously it doesn't hurt to be able to draw something. But then there is composing. I mean, we look out here and we see what's in front of us. And, you know, I've painted with enough people to know that there are some people that would, you know, literally paint the blades of grass and the little flowers right in front of you. And there would be people that would paint those giant bird of paradise. And there are people that would do, you know, the parking lot over there, the mountains over here, just a close-up of that telephone pole, the people here. So it's, you know, how are you going to compose what's in front of you? So composition and rendering are big. But I've seen people who can not really render that great. They haven't spent a lot of time drawing, and they may not know how to compose real well, but their understanding of the medium, which is another one, they simply have a natural feel for the medium, and they're able to throw the paint around in a way that shows some sort of confidence they got from I don't know where. But putting the medium down is a huge part of it, understanding your medium. And watercolor is certainly a rather difficult one. It's always shocking when you pick up your first brush and paints and go, wow, I thought I was going to be a lot better at this than I am. I know that happened to me. So applying the medium is a big part of it. And the only one that you can't teach, and it's probably the most important, and I know that in Jürgen Hansen's class it was all about self-expression. And he was huge on this. And it really, in fact, I can remember him giving crap, I'm sure you can too, Kai. If you got too academic in that class, he would actually yell at you. And he would get behind you and go, "Scare yourself, goddammit!" He wanted you to just like shake yourself up and do something different, and don't feel like you can't express yourself. So he was hugely influential to me, and I think that self-expression is absolutely the most important of all of them. It's just to feel like you are looking at something and reacting to it and letting go and trusting that your reaction to it is going to be okay. And that's the part that people have trouble with, is going, I'm not good enough, or my reaction isn't that important. And it is. Everybody here has a different walk, a different talk, a different way of saying everything with their art. And it's just as important as the next person's. So it's just very important to know that whatever it is you're saying is worth saying. And I think that's why so many people give up, is they come to this place where they don't feel like they're good enough to continue. I know I did it. I felt that many times. Did you ever feel that, Kai? Where you just think, God, this isn't for me. I can't do this. It's just too hard, and I don't feel like I'm getting any better at it. So obviously, if you're going to be a painter, the first thing you got to do is what? Paint. I mean, you know, we all know people who have all the best supplies and the best studio, but they never paint. You know, they spend more time at the store buying stuff and, you know, reading about other artists, but they just don't paint. So it's really, if you want to be an artist, you got to paint. And I love, if I could think of one of the most important things I ever heard from any teacher I ever had, and I know anybody who's a student of mine has heard this enough times, but there's a few of you certainly who haven't been in my class, and you need to hear this. It was Charles Movalli, and if you don't know his work, check him out. I mean, I think Charles Movalli is one of the most amazing artists alive. He was the one that put together all those Emile Groupé books. Groupé on color, Groupé on, was it brush strokes, and Groupé on painting. Does anybody, if you don't know who Emile Groupé was, G-R-U-P-P-E apostrophe, he was a painter, very, very, very great marine painter from the East Coast, and he died like it. Does anybody know who Emile Groupé was? Wow. Well, some of his books are still in the library, and I remember there used to be 2 of each of those books, and they started to vanish, and then I realized if you tried to buy one, they were like worth $400 or $500. Very valuable book if you get your hands on one. Anyway, Charles Movalli was the guy, when I took a workshop from him, I said, yeah, so you edited those books. Tom, I didn't edit those damn books. I wrote those books. I took all the pictures, you know, and he said, I did everything. Emil just did the paintings. But he was this guy from the East Coast, and he had this accent, and he was really funny. And his mantra was, it's quantity, not quality. What are you worried about the quality for? You do the quantity and the quality comes later. And it was just like, wow, you know, this is the quantity. And you know, one phrase that kills me, and when somebody says, how long have you been painting? Well, I mean, you know, are you doing a painting a year, a painting a week, a painting a day, a painting every 5 years? It doesn't have anything to do with how many years you've been painting, because it has to do with how many paintings you've done. So you can get really good if you do a lot of paintings. And I've never seen anybody not be able to do this. I have not ever seen anybody put the time in and do the quantity and not get the quality. But you got to play this game with yourself that you don't worry about that. You don't worry about the outcome of your painting. Frank Webb said, the person who's worried about the outcome of their painting is probably not having any fun. And I love fun. Anybody that knows me knows I love fun. I love fun. And so I'm not going to paint if it's not fun for me. I'm just not. It's all about just doing it. And I love that. Just know that you can do it if you put in the time. So how many people are have been painting, well, let's just say how many people have done under 100 paintings here? Under 100. Okay. Well, I think, and there are people that might dispute this. I don't know what your opinion on this, but I think that having somebody that's inspiring you. I know you agree with this, but I think that some people don't go through the early part of their education without feeling guilty about copying people. And I know I copied a couple of people. I probably did at least 150 copies of George Post and Edward Norton Ward, people like that. And it's important to when you're starting out to feel like there's somebody you want to be like. And did you do that? Did you copy anybody?
I want to be like Tom Henderson.
You were way ahead of me. And what all the masters did that, they copied. They went to the galleries and they copied and copied. So, but the idea is you got to get over that part. You can't continue with that. So some of you guys who've been in my class, I'm like, okay, you can stop copying now. You need to find your own voice, because this thing of self-expression is a muscle that if you don't exercise it, you won't be able to get better at it. But in the beginning, you do have to have somebody that inspires you, and I always have somebody that's inspiring to me. So I think that researching is a huge part of keeping yourself excited and finding new artists. And man, is it easy now. I find an artist that I really like. I'll get Charles Movalli, who I just think is really my favorite artist in the entire world. You know, very loose, really great composer. And I'll look at somebody like him. I'll look him up. Then I'll find out what gallery he's in, and I'll look up those galleries. And then when I'm in that gallery's website, I go, wow, who's this? That's somebody I've never seen. And I'll go, wow, I really like her art or his art. And then I find out what galleries they're in. And then I look in those galleries and I see, and there's this like scads of art available right now with the internet that you can look at and go, I mean, I have found so many new artists in the last couple of years that just like turn me on, and it makes me want to paint. And I'm not going to copy them, but I will say, hey, that's kind of an interesting thing to be painting. I've never really thought about painting that, or maybe that's a really nice color scheme or a great composition or something, but we can always get something out of what other artists are doing. I'm trying to think of what another one of Charles Movalli's favorite sayings was. It was, copy nobody but steal from everybody. But he's not talking about the very beginning. In the very beginning, it's fine to copy people, but you know, maybe 100 or so paintings. But you always want to be getting inspired by what other people are doing. If you don't do it, you're cheating yourself. So I've always got somebody that inspires me, you know. I've found a lot of, yeah. Victoria?
Go ahead.
Okay. Victoria,
Yes.
what do you want?
When you are considering being inspired by others, do you feel that your own inspiration sometimes is enough?
Well, yeah, but this is, you know,
I'm a student. It's okay.
is enough. I guess what do you mean by enough? You mean that I don't need to be inspired by anybody else?
Do you have moments where you feel like you actually have the better idea?
I don't know if it's an idea. It's more of a you're drawing on the art of the world, and I don't ever think I know it all. I mean, maybe sometimes I act like I do. But no, I think it's always really important to keep open to what other people are doing and not think that you always... Sure, after you study what someone is doing, you could certainly disagree with it, but I don't know. Does that answer your question?
No.
Are you saying that you think that people should maybe not look into other people's art?
I'm thinking maybe you can get overly influenced if you depend on it too much.
Okay, I'm going to touch on that. When I first started painting, I was extremely influenced by George Post, Edward Norton Ward, you know, all the California guys like Phil Paradise and Emil Kosa. And because I was very influenced by them. I did paintings that would maybe be called similar to those people, but everybody becomes their own unique blend of all their influences. I don't think I paint like anybody else right now, but I was influenced by at least a dozen people in the very beginning. So I'm my own unique blend of all my influences. I don't paint like any of those people anymore, but they certainly influenced me.
They added to the brew.
Right. And you know, does anybody remember Ken Knack? Yeah. Well, I was lucky enough, I was on the GI Bill before they made you have to have some sort of a program. I took Ken Knack's, I was on the GI Bill, I took his class for 13 years. Finally they called me in the office and said, hey, are you ever going to go for a degree of any kind? Because we need you to take some academic subjects here if we're going to continue to give you $300 a month. So, but I took Ken Knack's class year after year, quarter after quarter, and the one thing that he said that I loved was, your job as an artist is to keep yourself excited. And if you don't keep yourself excited, how is anybody going to be excited looking at your work? And I know that if I'm not excited about going to my easel and painting, it's really easy to fall out of the habit and maybe not paint for a week or two. You get busy, especially if you go on a vacation or something and you come back and you're like, yeah, I'll start painting tomorrow. And as much as I love to paint, it's so easy to find other things that you need to do. And I try not to let that happen too much, but I think, at least it's just for me, this is me, Victoria, I love to look at other people's art. And I find it really keeps me excited seeing what other people are doing. What do you think? Do you like to look at other people's art?
Yeah. You put me on to that artist name, Y-U-A-N.
S.C. Yuang.
Oh, yeah.
Did you get that book?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And he's very abstract.
Yeah. Yeah. But you saw that early work where he was doing these impeccable portraits,
Yeah.
and then he just got looser and looser till finally it was like it looked like he was painting with his feet. But this guy could paint extremely beautiful portraits.
I couldn't hear the question.
I was asking Kai if she felt like it was part of her her painting process to keep other artists in mind that she's thinking about, or that she's influenced by, or that she would like to become more like.
What was the name of this person?
S.C. Yuang, Y-U-A-N. He was an Asian guy, and unfortunately he was never happy with his art or his life, and he finally took his own life. But incredible painter. So you got to paint, you got to enjoy it. I think that for me, if I couldn't use my imagination, I wouldn't really enjoy painting that much either. I like to feel free to move anything where I want to move it to, or move it out of the painting completely, or if I feel a need to put in a tree or a telephone pole or a building or a person, that I can do that. And so I think that another thing that makes painting fun for me is using my imagination. And I was really good at doing that in school when it came to the teacher asking me why I didn't do my homework. So I have some practice at that one. What else? I think that's pretty much. Have I not touched on anything right here? I think I've said everything I really feel like I need to say. Do we have any questions? Jen, you've heard my spew enough times. What have I forgotten?
Well, what I hear is loosen up. So that's the mantra that I have in my brain. I said the thing that I'm remembering most that you tell to me is that I need to loosen up. You got the technique now, loosen up.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Did you get that? Jan was talking about me telling her to loosen up a bit. Jan has been in my class for what now, maybe 2 years? And she started out with, she started at ground zero, and she's been really dedicated, and she's really come a long way, and I can see that you love it. You love it. And I'm so happy to have you in my class. But I think that and her question was, well, you wanted me to talk a little bit about loosening up. And I think some people get to the point where the academic stuff is pretty solid and you've got your proportions really pretty together, and you've got a pretty good technique with your charcoal, but you're not trusting yourself to just have an experience. Because I know the times that we've done that, you're going, wow, I like that. I'm going, well, you can do that every time, but you will often go back to this safe thing of just getting academic about it and slowing down, and then this whole other person comes out when you loosen up. And that's what Jürgen Hansen's message always was, you know. And for me, I give myself a certain amount of time to paint almost always, and I always did better with the quick sketches. When it was a 20-minute, it was too much time for me, and those sketches, this is figure drawing, were never my favorites. And it's the same with painting. I like to pretty much say on your mark, get set, go, and do it, and then I'm done. And those end up being the best paintings because they're coming from here, you know. You're not thinking about them too much. So loosening up I think is good. It's not everybody's cup of tea.
Contrasts about getting the dark. You kept harping on it.
Okay. Well, if I think certainly of the elements of design that value is the most important. I mean, everybody talks about color, but I think color is like at the bottom of my list as far as importance. Values, getting your dark, mid, and light values and distributing them. I like to say that I like to roughly have my values distributed 60, 30, 10. If you took 100% and you gave one value 60%, it would be the mid value. And then you can decide whether the 30% is your dark or your light. Those are interchangeable. It's rarely going to be, I'm not going to say you can't do it, I've done it. There are people that do it, but it would not be a general way of thinking to have the dominant value dark. You certainly don't want the dominant value light because it just looks like a wimpy painting and you didn't really commit yourself. So to have a painting that's really, really light, it doesn't work. I mean, it looks like the person could not commit to making a design. So, and certainly Thomas Van Stein does really well with his dark paintings, but personally I can only look at a few dark paintings that are all dark. You know, it's great, it's a great effect, but it's like a special effect. Most successful paintings are done with a majority of mid-value. And that, I'd like to divide the mid-value into dark and light mid-value. So you have the darkest dark, which is practically black, and the lightest light, which is practically white, and then you have two values in between, which I'll call the middle value, a darker mid and a lighter mid. And so if you can learn to balance your values in an asymmetric way, big, medium, small, then you'll probably have a successful painting or drawing. But you've got to really, like I think it was Ed Whitney said, there's no democracy in art. If you want to have something democratic, your art's going to be boring because we don't like to look at symmetry. It's boring. So you have to learn to use asymmetric balance.
I ran into that when I was teaching puppetry in the classroom, and we had Santa Claus and a big whale and the elves. And the teacher believed each student should have the same size puppet.
Well, did you set him straight?
I remember being rather frustrated by her methods and her value system. I wanted a big whale and a nice jolly Santa and little elves, but she had trouble with that. Equality.
Right, yeah. Which actually, you know, this brings me to something else that I think is important, and that is that every single part of your painting, the color, the value, the sizes of your shapes, for me, big, medium, small is huge. If you have colors, you want to have a dominant color, and then you want to have another color that is never competing with your dominant color. And when I say that, I don't mean that it has to be the same blue, but you know, that you've got a lot of blue in here. Maybe some of it's leaning towards green, maybe some of it's leaning towards violet, but you have a lot of blue. You never want to challenge that color. So big, medium, small goes for color as well. The values, the colors, the shapes, big, medium, small is a huge part of designing. And I always like to use the word design because composition is kind of a scary word for some people. It reminds them too much of a big fat book with lots of rules in it. So I like to use the word design. I know Jürgen hated that word. You could never talk about design. It was a bad word. Also, negative shapes was something else that he never liked.
Also technique.
Yeah, technique. Well, I think negative shapes are probably, I mean, I agree with some people that they're actually as important or more important than the positive shapes. And there's a saying that if you take care of your negative shapes, the positive shapes take care of themselves. I'm always looking at the negative shapes. So if I'm in the harbor painting, I'm not looking at the boats, I'm looking at the water. I'm looking at the shape that the water is turning into because of the shapes of the boats and the piers and all those things that create the shape of the water. That's what I'm attracted to. So negative shapes are huge. Start looking at the negative shapes. But big, medium, small, if you want a really good book on composition, because I had read a few that were really too hard to get through. There's a book that Frank Webb wrote called Strengthen Your Paintings with Dynamic Composition. And it's very easy to get through. I don't particularly like Frank Webb's work anymore. I used to when I first started painting. I liked it. He's very abstract and very geometric. So if you don't like his work, don't let that stop you from paying attention to his philosophy and his explanation of composition. It's a really, really easy to follow book on composition. And he was a huge fan and student of Ed Whitney. Does anybody know who Ed Whitney was? Ed Whitney was the great-grandfather of watercolor workshops. I think he probably, arguably the first guy to have watercolor workshops in the 30s, and there are volumes of his sayings. He was a very smart guy. Apparently he was a real sexist. I've heard some stories about him like, oh my God, you'd be sued if you did the stuff he did. But the story that I love about him, that he was asked on his last day of teaching, he was like 90-something years old, and it was his last gathering of students, and one of the students said, hey Ed, if you were to give us just one piece of advice before you stop teaching us all, what would it be? And the story goes that he, got his cane and got up on this chair and he wrote the word draw up on the top of the blackboard, and then he underlined it, and then he did it all under the board, and then he did it all along the wall, and then he spent like 20 minutes underlining it along the floor, and that was his thing, was draw. So anyway, Yeah, Louise.
A comment as having been a student and a student for years. I'd have to paraphrase, I don't remember the exact words, but you said that you often will say the same thing over and over again in all your various classes. And that was okay because as a student, we would hear it when it was important and clicked to us. And I want you to know that's true.
That's why I said it.
You know, the first time I thought, oh yeah, sure, you know. But so much of it goes over your head,
Yeah.
by your ears, and then there will be a time when that phrase, that statement will click. And it's a time when you need it, and it's a time that pushes you.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me that, because that's very true. And what happens is, because in a classroom environment, I mean, you have everybody from a person who's never had a paintbrush in their hand to people who've been in your class for 20 years. And, you know, it's really hard to deliver a message and touch everybody. And, you know, the people who have been there, I remember when Jurgen would give his famous circle speech, we'd all be, okay, I think I'm going to go get a soda now. Because, you know, after 13 years in his class, you know, you just kind of, and so, but everybody is coming in with a completely different amount of experience. So it's difficult it's impossible to have everybody assimilate everything at the same time, because some of you already know stuff and some of you don't. But what Louise was saying is that if you're a beginner or you're even at an intermediate stage and you hear something and it doesn't stick, it's not like you're in 4th grade math class where you're like, oh crap, I'm going to miss, I'm screwed now. If it doesn't mean anything to you right then don't worry about it. Because, you know, it's going to be repeated. If you have any kind of a teacher, they're going to repeat the same stuff, because really art's been pretty much unchanged as far as theory and the principles of design, etc., for hundreds of years. So it's just the same old thing. I remember Bob Frame talking about values and dark against light, light against dark, dark against light. And I remember thinking, and this cracks me up, because I remember thinking, when's he going to stop saying that? I'm so tired of hearing that. But I wasn't doing it, you know. I wasn't putting dark next to light or light next to dark, but I got so tired, go, God, I hate it that he keeps saying that. And then finally I went, whoa, dark against light, light against dark. And it was just like, but it didn't mean anything to me when he said it, because I was just beginning, and it was meaningless. And then, I don't know what your epiphany was, Louise, but you know,
Several, and I'm sure there's still need to be several more.
but just that when you're ready to hear it, it'll make sense. If you're not ready to hear it, don't worry about it.
Tom, I wonder if there aren't any more questions, if we could go inside and perhaps you could tell us some things that appealed to you about your first, second, and third place
Sure.
Awards that you awarded in this show. And I know that some of our artists are in the audience today, and perhaps they would like to ask you to critique their pieces.
Okay,
if
sure.
that's okay
Sure.
with you?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. We're clearing all this out. We're doing some remodeling.
Excuse me?
Let's get them going now.
Really? So right after Alvo Fest, we closed down for a couple months. First place winner is back here.
Oh, yeah, okay. I appreciate you showing me.
This would be the first place winner. And then the second place.
Which is the first place? Okay, let me get a shot
Blue
here.
ribbons indicate first.
Okay. And second place?
Second place winner is this piece.
Okay.
Honor is over here.
And third place?
Where's third?
Third place is up there. Honor is here.
Yeah, here's third place.
Great, okay.
Shocked that I picked an abstract painting?
Yes. No.
Who said no?
I was glad.
So this is the first place?
Yes, it is. I think that's a really nice painting. It spoke to me, and it's really personal. I think it's well balanced, and I think it's well composed, and I got a good feeling looking at it. So I can remember when the first time I tried to get into the Santa Barbara Art Association, and the juror was an abstract painter. And I thought I had some decent little landscape paintings, but I remember not getting in, and I thought, oh. And then I found out that it was the juror was an abstract painter. And so I find that so, what would be the word? To not be able to appreciate an abstract painter if you're a landscape painter, or vice versa. So I thought that was a very nice painting. And there were so many nice paintings in here. And actually, to be honest, I hate this job. I don't mind this part of it, but the thing is I have so many students who are going to go, I didn't get first place, and it's hard for me, because I don't want to make anybody feel like I don't like what they're doing, but I have to be honest when I'm looking at something that moves me, and I thought that was a very nice painting.
Tom, I would say I wasn't surprised, I was pleased, because that made me feel like it's okay for me to express myself in a variety of ways and still submit my paintings to you. But I see a very architectural component, and I know how much you like architecture. So.
Yeah, I wish the person was here that did it, but it's very well. It's a beautifully balanced painting.
Now, she's been a good artist for many years, and I think she's even taught.
I'm kind of a closet abstract painter anyway. I think that all art is about abstract shapes anyway.
Mostly, as far as I know.
What struck you most? Was it the colors or the shapes, or what?
Everything. I think it's balanced beautifully. I think it's really personal. I don't think this person was worried about the outcome of their painting, and I don't think that they were. I think it looked like they were having fun. That's why I wish they were here. I'd like to find out if they were having fun. But it looks like somebody who is having an experience, and I would have that on my wall. I think it's a really nice painting. And I was thinking, because I think I gave second prize to an abstract painting as well. Right here. Is that person here?
Yeah.
Who is it?
Oh, no, that's not.
No, she's not here.
What?
Could you stand next to me?
I love abstract painting, and I think it's encouraging for people to know it's okay to do this, because I wish I could do it, but if you're going to make your living in this town, you can't be much of an abstract painter. I hate to say, there's just not that much. There aren't that many venues for it. But I think that's a very nice painting as well. I think it's got beautiful colors. I think it's balanced beautifully. I love the colors, and it takes a lot for me to do something because of color only. But there are some gorgeous colors there. I think the shapes are working together really well. And again, it's a real personal experience.
Third place, I believe, is over there.
Guess not. I like this painting because it has some abstract quality to it too, and I love the vagueness of all the shapes. I love vagueness. I love to have a certain amount of vagueness in my paintings too, and it's not that easy to do. But I think this is some very nice controlled vagueness. We know what things are, but they're not spelled out, and I like the painting. I think it's a very nice painting, and I love the square format as well.
Tom, the first and second place paintings seem to deal with doors, and this one seems to deal with shores. How much consideration in the title of the show do you credit with your selections? Is it real important, or do you go more just...
You would be shocked to know, Gary. Because you know, if I was gonna, let's say, buy a painting or put a painting on the wall, you know, I wouldn't. It wouldn't matter to me what the name of the show was, or I mean, to me, it's like, is it a piece of art or isn't it? You know, and so I really tried not to have that influence me, because that would just sort of make it a clever sort of thing, and I don't want the art to be clever. You know, I want it to be, okay, is that a nice piece of art or isn't it? You know, so I didn't spend any time thinking about that, Gary. Are you disappointed?
No, I'm happy.
Do you think there's a value to having a name for a show?
Sure, it gives people you know, a focus, and it also allows people to sort of, you know, see the diverse ideas, you know, when it comes to one subject, or in this case too. But yeah, I think it's a great idea to have the name Doors and Shores was a really a good idea. I love what you know. To be honest, Gary, this is going to tickle you even more. When I put that piece in here, I wasn't thinking about Doors and Shores. And then when that who was it? Was it Nick Welsh, or who wrote the article there in the news press about this show?
Was it Joe Woodard?
Oh, it was Woodard, yeah. He said, you know, how I was interested in the old, you know, 200-year-old doors. I wasn't thinking about that. I love the way they tell you what you're thinking when you're like, I wasn't thinking of that. Anyway, no, I didn't think of that at all.
Try to make a living.
And you said Chuck doesn't sell as much, but in this town, right? Okay.